Serious. Dear Reddit, what are some of your weirdest, scariest paranormal experiences? Story 1. The cameras at my work are programmed to flick to areas of motion when they are inactive. One night at like 3 a.m., when I was alone for a 4-block radius, all of them flicked to the door right outside of my office. There are 190 separate camera feeds. Story 2. So I used to work in a grocery store, small store, so we didn't have a specific job we did, like cashier, but all of us did what was needed, and we felt like that day. If you didn't feel like you wanted to deal with customers, you could just do inventory or stock shelves. Nice job. First I noticed something weird was when I was doing the evening shift before closing. My coworker was with me. It was a slow evening and he was taking a break downstairs. So I was checking best before dates from products near the cash register and in front of the doors. I was completely alone and suddenly I heard the heavy metal door shut close that led to the break room. I just thought, well, my coworker is coming back up. Nothing unusual. Didn't even bother to turn around. Until my coworker runs to me and asks, did I go downstairs a minute ago? I said, no, I've been here the whole time and the only one here. He asks, am I sure? I say I am completely sure and see him freaking out a bit, and he's not a man who freaks out easily. For example, we had a theft and he ran after the thief until he gave him back what he stole. So he starts checking the whole store, which is really not big, and no one is found. Okay, we still call our boss in case it is a robbery or something, and he comes by. We watch the security tape and see the heavy metal door slightly opening and closing, but no one going. After this incident, my coworker says he has heard footsteps after closing, but never found anyone. So another evening shift, I'm the cashier again, and working with my other coworker. He is checking the freezer in the back, so I'm alone in the store. This old lady comes in and I greet her from the cash register. She doesn't answer, whatever. People often don't. I'm bored, so I decide to follow her trough the security monitor. She just walks around and goes to a blind spot, so I don't see her trough cameras. But she never comes out. I'm waiting, thinking, UTF, pretty sure this place is haunted by now. I go to that aisle and there's no one there. My coworker comes to let me go home and asks, is the store empty? I tell him what happened and he just shrugs, saying he has seen the old lady and doesn't get it either. TLDR. I worked in a haunted grocery store. Answer. I also worked in a grocery store and had to go into the basement supply area early each morning. I saw a figure swinging in a dark back room, like a really tall guy, sort of, or a hanging guy. Turns out the manager from the store that was there before hung himself down there. No bullshit. Wasn't even from the area and had no knowledge of the event, but saw the guy for like 1/110th of a second. 1010 wouldn't want to see it again. Story 3. Western Oklahoma at my grandparents' when I was 6 years old. My older sister and I convinced our grandpa to let us sleep on the porch. He had a border collie that was fiercely protective of us. Anyway, sometime in the middle of the night, my sister wakes me up. There was a shed about 50 feet away, and floating next to it was a ball of light. It had a diameter of about 4-6 feet. It made absolutely no sound, and it was not moving at all. I was scared, but my sister thought it would be a good idea to walk towards it to see what it was. She got about halfway and it shot off at about 90 degrees into the sky without making any noise. Never did figure out what it was. And no, the dog did nothing except kind of hide. Answer. You know, the ball of light thing seems to be really common. When I was young, also maybe 6 years old, I shared a room with my mom and my brother. For some reason, in the middle of the night, I woke up and I saw a ball of light floating over me too. It couldn't have been more than 10 inches in diameter, unlike yours. I wasn't scared, and it just kind of quickly floated away through the wall. Now this was real. There was no way in hell I was dreaming. I dream in third person, and it never feels real. Always been like this. The next morning, my brother asked something along the lines of, "Why was it so bright last night?" He thought I was using a flashlight, and it confirms to me that what I saw was real. Story 4. I have extensive hypnagogia where I can experience sleep paralysis and sometimes even sleepwalk while being aware of my surroundings. When I experience hypnagogia, I see shadows move about quickly all around me and hear whispers from them. It's a frightening experience, and I always woke up standing in another room with my heart pounding hard and would realize the whispers I hear was from myself speaking. I always wondered if I had some serious mental disorder or if there was something more to it. Answer. This gave me chills. Do you remember any of the whispers? Also, sleep paralysis with sleepwalking is so interesting to me. From the little I know based on the few times I've looked it up, I don't believe it's a mental disorder that affects your conscious mind. I wonder if there's some kind of expert who specializes in sleepwalkers who hear voice-shave visions. Might be worth looking into. Story 5. I think I might be going through mine right now. We live in a 100-year-old building in NYC. There is a surprisingly large pool of rent-controlled tenants, all of whom, for those familiar with the city, are pretty typical Upper West Siders. Old, crazy, talk too close to your face types. As these people pass, the management company is gut renovating the units and charging market rate, which is easily 6 to 7 Ts, the previously charged rate. I bring this up only to show that there is a very diverse economic personality population in the building. The person inhabiting our unit prior to us was an older man named John who had lived here since his early years in the 1940s. I had a chance to see the unit before it was renovated, and it was bizarre to say the least. It obviously hadn't been touched since the 50s and very poorly maintained. The man had 5 different rooms, all of which he had painted a solid color, including the floor. The dining area was floor to ceiling, fire truck red, the living room was black, and the bedrooms were Pantone yellow. Floor, 2, ceiling. According to our neighbors, who are also recent additions to the building, he would blast opera music at 2 a.m. He was in his 90s and his boyfriend was in his 30s, and they were always screaming at each other, and they lived in complete filth. He was well known on our block mostly because he had lived here his whole life. So that's a lot of background, but I feel like it gives me a reason of why what's happening is happening. After the dust settled from our move into the newly redone apartment, my husband was working late and I was at home on the couch. It is positioned in such a way that when sitting on one end, the guest bedroom door is just cut off from your line of sight. I'm with my dog doing a Sudoku when I hear the gentle click of the door closing. My dog's head perks up, and he gives a low growl. He's a schnauzer, so this isn't uncommon for him if he hears any kind of unexpected noise. I get up and see the guest room door has shut. I go in. All the windows are closed in the apt, but it's an old jerk building, so I don't think anything of it. I open the door and go back to my puzzle. A few minutes later, the door closes again, but with a bit more intention. The sound spooks me, but only that I wasn't expecting it. I'm genuinely just thinking it's structural. I open the door again and decide to watch it for a bit and see if I can see where the fault is. It stays perfectly still for about 3 to 4 minutes. I turn around to go back to the couch, and I shoot you, not that door immediately slams behind me. Now, I'm scared. I whip around to open the door, and it is locked. Handle won't budge. It's worth repeating that all these fixtures are brand new, which kind of feeds the argument of malfunctions, but also that it shouldn't. My brain couldn't decide. What happened next is harder to explain with just words. When I have told this part of the story to other people, I'm able to demonstrate. But I put my ear against the door. It's a cheaper, modern, single-panel door, so it looks nice but doesn't feel hearty. And I immediately hear something knock on the other side, as if it were a quick tap with the backside of the hand, using their knuckle. I could hear the position of the hand, if that makes sense, and the door gave a gentle vibration. This is when I straight up freaked, grabbed my dog, decided it was time for his evening walk, and called a friend who wouldn't think I was insane. I got back and closed myself in the bedroom. These kinds of events continue. My parents come to stay with us 1 week and we wake up the next morning, and my mom says to me at breakfast, "You know you have a ghost, right?" I had not mentioned our experiences to others because literally anyone who stayed with us would be in this spooky room and I didn't want them to be on edge. I go totally numb when she says this. I ask her why she thinks that, and her response was, "I saw him. He was sitting in your desk chair." I don't think it's a mean ghost, though. He seemed very old. I couldn't engage in the conversation further. Story 6. I've posted this before. My grandfather had been in WW2 and told us about when himself and a few other soldiers had been separated from his unit and were trying to get to Normandy. They had gone through a clearing in a wooded area but had to drop when they heard something approaching. They were on their bellies in low grass when they saw a 20 or 30 German soldiers running across the clearing, clearly in a state of panic. Then they just froze in mid-step. He said they resembled statues and that some weren't even touching the ground, and that there was no noise whatsoever. Even the birds had gone silent. After a few seconds came a loud noise like metal scraping on concrete, and the frozen soldiers started to become blurry to the point at which they vanished without a trace. This had been reported by all of the soldiers that were present, and all were called to the War Office, London, after their return to the UK. There, they were pressed on what they saw over the period of a few days, and were taken back to the same spot in France shortly after the war had ended. Surprisingly, when they got there, there were other men sharing the same accommodation who reported similar occurrences in the exact same area. They were all taken to the woods and had to describe where and how the events took place. My granddad had said that the entire area was guarded heavily, and that part of the ground was heavily excavated. The strangest thing of all the other, he said, was that there were hundreds of dogs in the area, just milling around for no apparent reason. They returned to the UK with a gag order, ordering them never to speak about any of this. He went back to the same spot in France before he died in 1985 and said that the area had been covered with unmarked warehouses and was guarded by an unusually professional security company. He reckoned they were military. I've tried to find out more about this, but can't find any records of it. But I do remember one of the guys who he was with the day. He used to come and visit sometimes and referred to the place as the Splintered Woods. Edit. Thanks for the interest all, but I really don't know the exact location of where it happened. Granddad wouldn't tell us, as he said he didn't want us going near the place. I'll talk to my dad and see if he knows more. Answer. Froze in mid-step. He said they resembled statues and that some weren't even touching the ground, and that there was no noise whatsoever. Even the birds had gone silent. After a few seconds came a loud noise like metal scraping on concrete, and the frozen soldiers started to become blurry to the point at which they vanished without a trace. You know, I'm genuinely curious if aliens helped turn the tides of previous world wars. There are several anecdotes like this that I've read in the past. Story 7. I posted this before on another throwaway account, but I forgot the password. Me and 2 friends go down and rent a boat on Lake Okeechobee in Florida. We get a 30-foot pontoon boat that has a cover, although there's no cabin or anything under the main deck. It's winter in South Florida, so it's cool but not cold. Thus, we decide to just sleep on the boat instead of setting up a camp. We plan on spending 3 days and 2 nights on the lake. We spend our time drinking, fishing, and playing games. It's sometime on the second night when I just wake up. I'm still tipsy from our previous activities, but my senses are on overdrive and I just feel aware of something. I was sleeping towards the back of the boat while my friends are at the front. It's eerily calm with no waves in the water. We were about 250 feet from shore with land on our port side. I started scanning the tree line looking for something. Nothing on land, so I scanned the water on the port side. Nothing. So I scanned the water aft of the boat. Nothing. I didn't want to disturb my friends up front, so I scanned the water on the starboard side. That's when I saw it. A skull floating in the water with just the eye sockets and part of the nasal cavity sitting there in the water looking right at me about 50 feet away. An immediate sense of dread took me. It was the most scared I'd ever been in my life. Then an even worse feeling took over. Calmness and the sudden urge to jump in the water. I had the notion that I would be at home and at peace if I just jumped into the water. Before I could act on it, I think one of my friends stirred in their sleep because I heard a beer bottle start rolling near the front of the boat. This snapped me out of it, and the feeling of dread returned. I yelled at them to get up while I moved to start the engines. One doesn't respond at all, while the other drunkenly tells me to fudge off. I yell again that I'm not fudge around, and nothing. I'm about to pull the starter on the engine, yell again at my friends when I hear something. I freeze and listen closely, a very faint splashing sound that is slowly getting closer. I forget about yelling at my friends and focus on starting the engine. I pull and pull and pull on the started and nothing. In between the pulls, I hear the splashing getting closer, but I don't dare look at the direction of the noise. Finally, the engine starts and I punch it out. Of there, I must have gone 30 miles before I came to a stop to conserve fuel. Until the sun rose and my friends woke up, I spent the rest of the night scanning the waters just in case. I had to make up a bullshit excuse to explain to my friends why we were so far away from our previous spot. I wanted to tell them, but I doubt they would believe me. When I got home, I did some research, and apparently Native American tribes possibly use the lake as a burial ground. Plus, there are thought to be the bodies of many victims of hurricanes throughout the decades laying in the lake. Fishermen have found many human bones over the years. This was over 6 years ago, and I have yet to set foot near any body of water larger than my shower. No lakes, oceans, rivers, water parks, pools, hot tubs, nothing. I don't blame you if you don't believe some random guy on the internet. Many times I tried to write it off as my tipsy self, seeing things. However, I can't write off the feeling of wanting to jump into the water with something, real or not, that struck me with terror just a moment ago. Thinking about that feeling of wanting to go into the water with whatever was out there chills me to this day. Answer: I don't know, man. Ghost Skull probably saved your idiot arse. Don't drink in boat S. I live on an island in the Pacific, and holy shoot do we have a problem with tipsy idiots getting themselves eliminated. I grew up on the west coast, which is the Tasman Ocean, and a killer, so was in Coast Guard, surf, life-saving, and cadets. My stepdad is a fire captain, Coast Guard, and Landsar, and my ma is victim support and Landsar. Between us, we've seen some shoot. And the worst is drunks boating and not wearing life vests. Sounds like you got your arse saved. Story 8. My grandmother got a call from her son. He was telling her how much he loved her and that he will be going away. The phone was cutting in and out. This was before cell phones. My grandmother thought, this is weird and is out of his character. This was at 10:00 a.m. Right when she hung up the phone, 2 police officers showed up at her door. They told her that they are sorry to tell her that her son died in a motorcycle accident at 8 hours in the morning. My grandmother said that is impossible, that she just got off the phone with him. Answer: you just reminded me of something. When my grandmother's younger brother passed away, my uncle, grandmother's son-in-law, received a phone call from an unknown number merely hours after he had passed, and the family was coming home from the hospital. It was Grandma's little brother. He had an unmistakable voice, but the line sounded odd and staticky, and all he said was, "Uncle's name. Thank you for everything," and hung up. No one's told Grandma because we don't know how she'd take it. Story 9. Somewhere during the mid-90s, when I was still in elementary school, my mother and I were sorting through old junk in the attic. We were sitting side by side in a closet that contained these removable panels that allowed access to the attic space on either side of the closet. We had dusty old junk all around us. It was the middle of the day, and we were the only 2 people in the house. Neither of us were speaking much, as we were too focused on all the old junk we were discovering. Out of nowhere, I clearly heard what sounded like a small child's pleading voice exclaim, "Mommy!" I don't know how I managed not to shoot my pants. I was immediately terrified. I was frozen in place for what seemed like an hour, but was probably only a minute. My mother looked me in the eye and asked, "Did you hear it too?" I said yes. We never spoke of it again. Answer: fudge auditory paranormal activity. One night, probably 10 years ago, group of friends were at our friend's known haunted house. Probably 2 in the morning, we are quietly talking in a closed room on the far side of the house, and me and my friend both heard her dad call from outside the door. Noon else heard it, and both our of blood ran cold. Was Noon outside the door? Lots of stories of voices being mimicked in that house. Story 10. The night my grandma died unexpectedly, I woke up in the middle of the night with tears streaming down my face. I had just dreamed she was walking into her house in heaven, and she looked so happy and healthy and gave me a wave. The next morning, I got a phone call that she had passed away, and while devastated, I wasn't surprised at all. Answer: I remember 2 nights before my uncle died, I had a dream where I was on his wall, almost like his motion camera, and saw him get out of his chair, hold his chest, and then fall to the ground and die. The next day we went round, he had actually fallen and badly bruised himself. I told Mum what I had seen in my dream, and she thought, kids being kids, it was just a dream. 2 days later, he died from a burst aneurysm. Mum refused to tell me exactly how he died because A, I didn't know he had one, and B, from his motion camera, how I described what I saw was picture perfect to what was seen on his camera. Story 11. Not my story, but my boyfriend's. My boyfriend was born in Russia, and he told me that when he was around 9, he went backpacking in the woods with his grandfather. His grandfather used to be in the military and has seen a lot of things in his lifetime and was not fazed by much. In the forest, there are some empty cabin-type buildings that hikers could stay overnight. There is no supervision. It's just a temporary shelter. One night, my boyfriend and his grandpa were getting ready to sleep in a cabin when the door knocked. His grandpa asked who it was, and a man replied asking to be let in. Because it's cold outside. His grandpa didn't reply and stood still. My boyfriend, confused by the silence, asked his grandpa why he wasn't moving or opening the door. Knocks were heard on the door again, and the man was asking repeatedly to come in. This persisted for a good minute until my boyfriend asked his grandpa again why he wasn't letting the man in. His grandpa told my boyfriend, "Look at the bottom of the door." And that's when my boyfriend noticed it. There was a gap at the bottom of the door. The moonlight was shining. Knocking could be heard, but there was no silhouette of a person. Standing on the other side, my boyfriend was so utterly spooked out that he hid under the blankets for the rest of the night. He told me the knocking eventually stopped. To this day, he has no explanation for what happened, but tells me that is the creepiest experiences he had. Story 12. 2 years ago, in summer, I worked in an open-air mining museum as a tourist guide. Around 80 of the tour is situated underground in an actual 500 years old mine shaft. During my first days, my boss was showing me around the mine, talking about some interesting facts and history so I could remember it and pass it on to the visitors. He had also lectured me about safety precautions. The underground part is around 125 kilometers long, and the deepest you go is until you reach the second horizon, a term used as a floor in a mine, which is around 100 meters. The whole place is much bigger, though. There's 14 horizons in total, and the tunnels connect to the surrounding mines in the area. So, in reality, there's hundreds of kilometers of tunnels down there, but they are mostly flooded or buried under rocks. There are 3 telephones underground, each around 500 meters away from another.